Hello, and welcome Who Dey Nation to the first ever Bengals Football Talk Show. On today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about some offensive combine participants, particularly those who flashed this past weekend in Indianapolis. But first, let's talk about a little Bengals news. The Dalton trade rumors have been heating up, as his main suitors appear to be Indianapolis, New England, and Chicago. The Bengals have vowed to work with Andy and make sure he's comfortable wherever he goes. In my opinion, this would be Chicago, as previous Bengals offensive coordinator Bill Lazor was hired as the Chicago offensive coordinator. I'm just intrigued to see what a possible return could be for Andy. Hopefully we could get a second or third round pick for him for this upcoming draft. As you'll see later, there are certainly a lot of exciting prospects just on the offensive side of the ball. Another Bengal destined to leave Cincinnati is Cordy Glenn, as the Bengals appear to be shopping him. Hopefully the Bengals can free up some cap space by cutting or trading Glenn to sign some linebackers or other positions of need. Paid way too much money to not play as he did last year. This past weekend, the Bengals have confirmed that they will, in fact, franchise tag A.J. Green if no deal is reached. And Joe Burrow has reportedly asked the Bengals to make sure A.J. is a Bengal next season. We certainly want to keep Joe happy, and keeping A.J. would be a huge plus, as he, in my opinion, should be a Hall of Fame receiver. I am personally excited to see what this offense can do next year with Joe, AJ, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, and others. I think we could have a big offensive season. Well, that wraps up our news for today, so let's get into the main topic of today's show, the Combine, mainly its offensive participants. Starting with the quarterback position, our boy, Joe Burrow. He is definitely our man of the future, and he's made it clear that he does not want to play for Cincinnati, which means the media, unfortunately, will no longer be able to push the false narrative that they have been pushing recently, that Burrow does not want to play in Cincinnati. However, I am starting to see that their new narrative is that Burrow is not going to be the incredible quarterback that they were saying he was going to be just before the Combine. He's now supposedly not going to be as good as Tua or even Herbert, just because now he has agreed that he will play for Cincinnati. Now, as for Burrow's Combine, he didn't really have one, but his physical measurements left a little to be desired for some with his 9-inch hands. He jokingly tweeted that he is going to have to retire now that he realized he has such small hands that the ball is going to just slip out of them. And Patrick Mahomes, who had 9.25-inch hands, responded to him, saying that he hasn't had any problems with his small hands. So hopefully our small hands joke can have as much success this season as Patrick Mahomes had these past 2 years. As for the other quarterbacks, Herbert had a very nice combine and potentially submitted himself as a top 10 selection. We'll see how teams feel coming in April, but he definitely threw well, ran well. But I just don't think he's going to be as good as Joe. Maybe a little bias there. Jalen Hurts ran pretty quick, a 4.59 40. Maybe he could be a Taysom Hill type player somewhere. I just don't think he has the passing attributes to get it done. The last quarterback I want to talk about is Hawaii's Cole McDonald. He cut his hair. He used to have long blonde dreadlocks, but it has appeared he's cut his hair as he prepares for his new profession. He ran the quickest time of the quarterbacks of 4.58 and also jumped a 36-inch vertical. A very athletic quarterback, maybe not the best thrower, but he's also a very interesting prospect. But likely will not be in orange and black stripes says, Joe Burrow is our man. Shifting to the running backs, Jonathan Taylor won the day. He secured the bag, a 4.39 40. Definitely cements him as my number one running back. A very explosive jumping 36-inch vertical and 123-inch broad jumps. Very solid. He had the production as well at Wisconsin. I just feel like he's going to be a very talented back in the NFL. DeAndre Swift had an okay combine, in my opinion. 4.48 40, 35.5-inch vertical. Good numbers, not great numbers in my opinion. A lot of other pundits seem to be higher on him than I do. Maybe I have a little Big Ten bias, being a big Ohio State fan. Cam Akers had a pretty solid combine, the running back out of Florida State. He ran a 4.47, 35.5-inch vertical, 122-inch broad jump to go with his solid college production. He's got pretty much ideal size for an NFL running back. In my opinion, he's very comparable to DeAndre Swift, and likely those two will go in the top 2 rounds for sure. Looking a little deeper down the board, Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State definitely popped at the combine with a 4.41 40, 37-inch vertical and a 125-inch broad jump. He's a little on the smaller side, 206 pounds compared to Taylor's 226. But if we were looking for another back to complement Mixon and Gio, maybe possibly move on from Gio, move on from Travion Williams, Darrington Evans could be that guy. He was a Sun Belt Player of the Year, and he's a fantastic kick returner. He's got the speed, he's got the athleticism. He could be an electric talent in the NFL. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum maybe is A.J. Dillon. He is a massive 247 pounds, but he jumped out of Lucas Oil Stadium this past weekend in terms of the running backs. A 41-inch vertical and a 141-inch broad jump. He is crazy explosive, a freak athlete. He ran a 4.53, so not as quick as these other backs, but he's big, he's explosive. I think he could be a very, very great NFL running back. Potentially spell Mixon on the goal line or in short yardage situations. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about Antonio Gibson. Now, he worked out with the receivers, but I see him as a running back at the next level. He's 228 pounds, and he ran a 4.39 this past weekend. So very similar to Jonathan Taylor, but he is a great kick returner. He was the AAC Special Teams Player of the Year, in fact. However, he only played 1 year at Memphis, and he will need more development to work with his elite traits. But he can catch the ball in the backfield, as he's clearly played receiver at Memphis. He can run the football. He just seems like he could be an electric, do-anything type player, one that we desperately need in Cincinnati, in my opinion. I can't remember having a player like that here. He potentially maybe could be a little bit like Christian McCaffrey for the Bengals, dare I say. Christian is, of course, an elite talent, but maybe you can always dream. Now moving on to the wide receivers. Let's first talk about Henry Ruggs III. He came for John Ross, but he fell short. A 4.28, however, is elite speed. He also jumped a 42-inch vertical, 131-inch broad jump. He's a freak athlete. He's crazy athletic, and he definitely will go in the first round, likely the first 15 picks. Not really on the Bengals radar, but wanted to mention that John Ross is still the 40 king. Now, shifting to a receiver that could be on the Bengals radar, Denzel Mims was certainly projected as a top of the second round guy, and he exploded at the combine. He's 6'3", 207 pounds, and he ran a 4.38 40, jumped a 38.5-inch vertical with a 131-inch broad jump. A phenomenal combine for Denzel Mims. He's got that great size and speed combination, and if we potentially look to replace AJ, if we can only get him on the franchise tag for next year, possibly the year after, if we cannot get a deal done, Denzel Mims could be our pick at the top of the second, especially if no linebackers are there or no defensive players are there that intrigue us. Another player with a great size-speed combination is Chase Claypool. A little bit bigger at 6'4", 238 compared to Mims. He ran a 4.42, jumped a 40.5-inch vertical, and a 126-inch broad jump. He is big, fast, and explosive, and could be another possible replacement for AJ. He didn't have the same hype as Denzel Mims coming into the combine, however. Potentially, we might be able to get him in the third, or maybe if we get a second for Andy Dalton, we could get him with our second round pick. Or if we don't like the options on the board at 33, we could always trade back and potentially take someone like Chase Claypool. Next up, we have Donovan Peoples-Jones from that team up north. He's got pretty good size, and he ran a solid 4.48, but when you get to his vert and broad jump, they are elite numbers. 44.5-inch vert jump and 139-inch broad jump, I believe, were the top lengths among receivers. I remember him as an elite high school prospect, but he just never lived up to his expectations in college. And as the Ohio State fan that I am, I believe he just played in a poor system in college and never had a capable quarterback or a capable coach, in my opinion. The scheme they ran at Michigan just never really suited a wide receiver. And I think he could play much better in the NFL than he did in college. And based on what he did in college, he's definitely going to be at a bargain spot in the draft, in my opinion. Next up is Justin Jefferson, who had a great combine and is getting a ton of hype, trending towards the first round. He was once someone we were thinking about at 33. He ran 4.43, jumped 37.5 and 126. He's got championship production with Joe Burrow, and it would be a dream to have him and Joe on the same team in Cincinnati with the connection they already have. But Boyd does have the slot spot locked down on this team. But if we could get someone as talented as Jefferson, I would jump at the opportunity. Another talented first-round receiver, in my opinion, Jalen Reagor out of TCU. He ran a 4.47, jumped very well, 42-inch vertical, 138-inch broad jump. He's just a spectacular first-round talent that if he fell to 33, I would run to the stand with his name on my draft card. Next up, out of Arizona State, we have Brandon Ayuk, I believe. He had a strong combine, ran 4.5, 40-inch vertical, 128-inch broad jump. He could be an option in the second with our Dalton pick, or potentially trading back from 33. Some have him projected to go in the first. I just don't really see that. So he may not be an option for the orange and black striped Bengals. The final receiver I want to talk a little bit about is Quintez Cephas out of Wisconsin. He ran the slowest among receivers, a 4.73, but I just don't feel like he's actually that slow. He led the receivers on the bench with 23 reps of 225 pounds. He jumped very well, a 38.5-inch vertical, 124-inch broad jump. He's just an interesting late-round option we could probably consider. You can never have too much depth at receiver, really. Now moving to the tight ends who worked out on Thursday, Cole Kmet established himself as a number one tight end in my opinion. The 6'6", 262-pounder out of Notre Dame ran a 4.7 40, 37-inch vertical and 123-inch broad jump. All incredible numbers. I would expect him to go in the first round after that. But if he falls to 33, he's definitely one that I would consider with the receivers and potentially the linebackers that would be available there. Cutting Uzomah would free up a lot of cap space, and if we took someone like Cole Kmet, we could feel a lot better doing that. Next up, the Dayton Flyers product, Adam Troutman. He's from a hometown college, and he performed especially well at the combine in the 3-cone. He's a very athletic tight end and earned Pioneer Conference Offensive Player of the Year this past season as a tight end, which is very impressive. He's a possibility as a late second-round pick, maybe an early third-round pick for our Bengals. Once again, I feel like Eifert might not be re-signed, and I don't feel comfortable moving forward with Uzomah, so I feel tight end should be a target for Cincinnati, whether in free agency or in the draft. Next up, our fastest tight end this past weekend, Albert Okwuegbunam. I'm sorry about that pronunciation. Out of Missouri. He's 6'5", 258, and ran a 4.49. He didn't participate in any other drills, and he didn't really need to. That size-speed combination is certainly eye-popping and definitely attracted my attention. I'd like to see how he does at his pro day a little bit more, and he could certainly be an option as he rises up the board. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about Josiah DeGuara, the tight end from Cincinnati. I mean, he's already in Cincinnati. Why not come over to Paul Brown Stadium and play for the Bengals? As a Cincinnati native, I am definitely a Bearcats fan as well as a Bengals fan, and I would like to see him in orange and black if possible, as I felt he played very well for my Bearcats this past season. And at the combine, he was near the top in every drill, 4.7, 240, 35.5-inch vertical, 115-inch broad jump, and he led tight ends on the bench press with 25 reps. Now, he is a little undersized at 6'2", 242, leading some scouts to peg him as an H-back. But I think he could be a productive late-round deal even if he moves to H-back. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about the offensive tackles this past weekend. And you can't do that without talking about Tristan Wirfs. He is possibly the most athletic offensive lineman I've ever seen. And he's maybe the biggest winner of the combine, running a 4.8 540 at 320 pounds. A broad jump of 121 inches is also crazy. And a 4.6 820-yard shuttle. He is definitely cemented himself in the top 5, definitely top 10 conversation in my opinion. Next up, Mekhi Becton out of Louisville. 6'7", 364, running a 5, 10, 40 is just as insane in my opinion. 23 reps on the bench. He's certainly a top 10 pick as well. Moving on to someone who might be available for the Bengals is Ezra Cleveland, the tackle out of Boise State. He had the top of the class 20-yard shuttle at 4.46, showing his great stop-and-go movement. 30 reps on the bench press was phenomenal for a tackle, and a 111-inch broad jump, also pretty good. Ezra Cleveland could certainly be a prospect the Bengals could target, as they need O-line help in general, O-line depth in general. The last tackle I want to talk a little bit about is Alex Taylor out of South Carolina State. He had a fantastic broad jump at 116 inches, but was just average in the 20-yard shuttle with a 4.79. He's 6'8" and 308 pounds, so he's a little on the lighter side for an NFL tackle, but he's very athletic. He could be a good late-round pick, maybe put some weight on him and groom him into a role to potentially replace Bobby Hart down the line. Last up, the interior offensive lineman, somewhere we could need some help for sure. First up, out of Ball State, I have Danny Pinter. He played tackle in college, but will certainly shift inside in the NFL. He had a good shuttle at 4.62 seconds and a good broad jump at 110 inches. He's a nice athletic guard, but he is lacking a little strength and could potentially get overpowered by NFL defensive linemen. Next up is a center, Matt Hennessy out of Temple. We are a little bit more solidified at center with Trey Hopkins signing his 3-year deal. But a good interior offensive lineman is a good interior offensive lineman in my opinion, and one of them should be able to shift over to guard. Hennessy had a good shuttle at 4.6, a nice broad jump at 110, very similar to Danny Pinter. One of the two could be a nice later round, mid-round selection for the Bengals as they look to bolster up their offensive line. Next up, potentially the best interior offensive lineman in this draft, Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan, that team up north. He ran a 4.64 20-yard shuttle, 113-inch broad jump, and repped 28 times on the bench. He's got good strength, athleticism, balance that you're looking for in an interior lineman. And he's played at the highest level in the Big Ten against the best team in the country in the Ohio State Buckeyes. He could be an interesting selection for the Bengals, so he could slide in somewhere at guard on either side. Next up, I want to talk about a tackle out of Kansas, Hakeem Adeniji, I believe. He played tackle at Kansas, but I would slide him inside to guard in the NFL. He's got a nice balance of strength and athleticism as he repped 26 on the bench press and jumped 115 inches on the broad jump. Didn't participate in the 20-yard shuttle, however, so maybe we could see him do that at his pro day, but either way, he is certainly an intriguing prospect to look at for our Bengals. Next up, I want to talk about the bench press leader at the combine. He repped 44 times, 225 pounds. That's Natane Moody out of Fresno State. He didn't participate in any other drills, and he has had a history of injury problems throughout college. And as a Bengals fan, that makes me want to stay away from him. Now, as someone in the Bengals front office, they see that as a value for some reason, and we are continually hurt every year, and we can never compete. We just need to get someone who can play well and stay healthy, in my opinion. Anyway, back to Netane Moody. He's definitely got the strength to push around interior defensive linemen. I don't know how he is athleticism-wise, but I would probably stay away due to the injury history. Now, the last player I want to talk about is the Indiana product, Simon Stepaniak. He is from nearby Hamilton, Ohio, a hometown kid. He also repped very well on the bench press, putting 225 up 37 times. But he was injured, missed his bowl game, and did not participate in any other drills besides the bench press. As a hometown kid, he'll likely give the Bengals an opportunity to get an extra look at him. So he could be a potential later round pick for the Bengals, as we certainly need help along the offensive line. Those are just my thoughts, however. What do you guys all think? Leave your thoughts on the combine, these players, in the comment section down below, please. Leave your thoughts on what you think the Bengals should do with this upcoming draft. I definitely think they could shore up a few spots along the offense and create quite the potent offense that could be a top 10 unit in 2020. I'm very excited about what could come for our Bengals, and the draft is just the start of it. Well, anyway, until next time, this has been Bengals Pro Football Talk. Hoo-day and go Bengals.